Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating breakdown of the Sharia framework, and this is actually based on a lecture by Hamza Yusuf. Now, if you're thinking this is just some strict, rigid list of arbitrary rules, well, prepare to have that assumption completely challenged. What we're looking at today frames it in a totally different way. It presents this as a brilliant, highly logical architecture, and it's designed purely for human well-being and protection. It's really cool stuff.
To understand how this architecture actually works, we've got a pretty clear roadmap. We're going to look at the cultural sieve, then we'll check out the main pillars: preserving religion and life, lineage, wealth and intellect, and the protection of honor. Finally, we'll wrap up with the 5 principles of jurisprudence. All right, let's jump in.
Okay, so we really have to start with the core philosophy here. In this framework, Sharia refers to sacred dispensations given to human beings based entirely on the preservation and benefit of humanity. It is not done out of some obligation to the Creator, and it's definitely not because the Creator somehow needs it. Think about that paradigm shift for a second. The baseline assumption here is that this entire legal framework exists solely to protect humanity and benefit us.
So, how does this actually interact with real-world societies? Let's start with Section 1, the cultural sieve.
This illustrates a really fundamental shift in how we think about independence. There's a stark contrast here with what's often called modern liberty. Modern liberty is basically described as doing whatever your personal desires dictate, which, paradoxically, causes a person to become a slave to their own passions. Islamic freedom, on the flip side, means submitting to the Creator in order to master yourself. It's all about freeing a person from the slavery of created things, freeing us from our own personal addictions.
And when this framework enters a new culture, it doesn't just come in and erase all those diverse, beautiful traditions. Not at all. Instead, it acts like a sieve. It actually keeps the good natural customs. Meaning, yes, you get to keep your beautiful Moroccan dress, and you absolutely get to keep those delicious Chinese dumplings. But what it does is actively filter out the harmful, destructive practices, things like ancient pagan rituals or forced dowries. It basically embraces the good in local norms while rejecting the harmful ignorance.
Which brings us right into Section 2, preserving religion and life. Let's see how this sieve actually builds the physical structure of the law.
These right here are the core load-bearing pillars of the entire system. They're called the 6 preservations. Every single rule, prohibition, or allowance in this legal system is designed specifically to protect these 6 things: religion, life, lineage, wealth, intellect, and honor.
Let's look at that first pillar, preserving religion, or Deen. Now, this isn't just about enforcing empty rituals. It's the primary pillar because it literally grounds society in reality. It exists to free the human mind from irrational, culturally ingrained fears and superstitions. Things like the modern architectural habit of just skipping the 13th floor in buildings or being terrified of broken mirrors and black cats.
The second pillar is the preservation of life. When this framework discusses severe retributions, it frames them not as mere cruelty, but as absolutely necessary, extreme deterrence. Think of it medically, right? A deterrent acts to wash out dirt, kind of like a surgeon having to remove a gangrenous limb. It is an extreme measure, for sure, but it's taken specifically to save the entire body of the society and protect the safety of the whole.
Moving on to Section 3. Lineage, wealth, and intellect. Here, we're going to explore the protection of identity, property, and human reason.
Preserving lineage, or Nasl, is entirely about the protection of identity. This framework dictates that absolutely every human has the right to know their true origins and parents. To put the tragedy of losing this right into perspective, just think about American slavery, where stripped identities literally forced people to use an X in place of their stolen family names. This pillar exists to prevent exactly that kind of human erasure. It's incredibly profound. Then we have the preservation of wealth, and this stands in direct, stark contrast with Marxist ideology, specifically Karl Marx's famous claim that all property is theft. In this framework, the strict protection of personal wealth is actually viewed as a divine right. Severe laws against theft exist precisely to guarantee that everyday people feel absolute security when they're in their homes or just walking down the street. But protecting the body and property just isn't enough. The 5th pillar focuses on preserving the intellect. And this is exactly why there is a strict prohibition on intoxicants like alcohol. It's a direct mechanism to protect brain cells and human dignity. The intellect is viewed as the very faculty,
that elevates and honors us as human beings. So avoiding anything that dulls or harms it is treated as a fundamental, absolute protection.
All right, on to Section 4, the protection of honor. And honestly, this is perhaps one of the most fascinating preservation pillars of them all.
I want you to just think about this question for a second. What actually happens when someone does wrong in the system? Does the law immediately seek to expose them to the public? It's a really common modern misconception to just assume the answer is yes. But the surprising truth here is that the system actively seeks to veil faults. To publicly punish private illicit acts, the law requires 4 simultaneous eyewitnesses to the specific physical act. That makes public punishment almost impossible, and that's incredibly deliberate. The system is designed to conceal personal failings specifically to allow for private repentance. It acknowledges that humans are flawed, and it prefers you fix those flaws privately rather than face total public ruin.
And crucially, these strict punishments cannot just be applied blindly. They literally cannot be applied in dysfunctional societies. For example, there is absolutely no cutting of hands for theft during a famine or during a time of extremely high unemployment. This proves that the system requires a healthy, functional society to actually operate, making it a holistic framework of justice rather than just some tool for blind punishment.
Finally, we reach Section 5, the 5 principles of jurisprudence. We're transitioning from those structural pillars to the really dynamic operating rules that govern how the law is actually applied.
Scholars use these 5 dynamic legal maxims to flexibly apply the law to our everyday, complex human situations. Number 1, intentions matter. Number 2, certainty beats doubt. Number 3, difficulty requires ease. Number 4, harm is removed. And number 5, norms are binding. Let's look a bit closer at how a few of these brilliantly adapt to real life.
Look at Principle 3, which states that difficulty necessitates facilitation. This just shows how the system constantly accommodates human weakness. Religious obligations should never cause undue physical duress. For example, it fully allows a pregnant woman to break a fast if it's unsafe for her, or a sick person to pray sitting down. The law literally bends to protect the individual.
And we see some incredible real-world practicality in Principles 4 and 5 as well. Harm is removed means avoiding medical harm easily overrides rules about modesty, allowing necessary medical exams without any hesitation, for instance. And norms are binding means that local customary language, like how people naturally speak in their specific region, is fully recognized and totally legally binding in local contracts.
So, when you put all these pillars and maxims together, the ultimate goal of the framework is a beautifully balanced society. It's designed to stand as a reliable middle ground. It actively avoids the historical pitfalls of extreme Puritanism on one side and extreme indulgence on the other.
Which brings us to a final, really provocative thought to leave you with. How might our modern societies look if they were built explicitly on these 6 pillars of human preservation? Just think about the immense value of structuring a whole society entirely around the protection of life, intellect, and honor. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.